Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging Soonercon. Join us for Oklahoma's premier pop culture convention. Soonercon returns June 20th through 22nd, 2025. This will be the 33rd year for Soonercon, and this year will bring even more cosplay, celebrity guests, kids' workshops, gaming, comic art, and after-hours events. Visit Soonercon.com for details.
On tap today, we have Braxton Cosby from the Cosby Media Productions. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Aaron.
I'm glad to have you here. I'm really excited to talk to you because I really enjoy the energy that your production company is putting out. I'll just start off by saying you are a small studio that has a lot of really, really great ideas, and you're not slowing down in the stuff you want to put out. You have a lot of projects, all of which are worthy of our attention.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's start off for the basics. You have a comic book called Broken,
Yes.
and the story behind that is not pulling any punches.
Right.
It's a science fiction post-apocalyptic story, but I'll let you kind of fill in the details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Broken. We're a small press publishing company, Cosby Media Productions, but we also have our own comic book imprint called Star Child Comics. The reason I lead in with that is because what we decided to do back right after COVID happened, we were already building a superhero universe with all of our novels. We had 6 authors contribute 18 novels, and we were like, hey, we're building this universe, we're referencing one another. We have a crossover novel at the time called Infinity 7, which is like our Avengers Assemble, Justice League sort of thing. So we had collaborated and co-wrote that book with 3 of our authors, including myself. And so we were really kind of thinking, like, what do we do next? We were going to conventions, people were buying the novels, but we wanted to kind of take something next level. So I had a crazy idea of actually going with comic books. And I said, everybody's like, well, where do we go with this? And I said, let's not do a comic book that retells our stories, but use the book as a gateway, the comic as a gateway to continue the story, just in a different medium. So where we had all this information and foundation of the stories and things like that in novels, and we were obviously allowing people to get into our minds to read what we were talking about and visualize it in their heads, we decided to finally move it into comic books where we can actually have artists who can bring those stories to life and people can see them in detail. The reason I say that is because at that point we became what we call a hybrid publisher. We publish our stories in both novels and comics, so it didn't stop with just those comics. We ran a successful Kickstarter to get those 4 comics funded. The Bark series, Bark Power Struggle by Daniel Payton, Menzuo, War at Home by Keyshawn Dodds. We also had Majesties of Canaan Tribulation by Kyle Champion, and myself, I had The Cape Hellfire. So those just continued the stories. They pick up right where they left off. So if people pick up, let's say for The Cape, I have 2 novels in that series, Cape 1 and then Cape 2 is Overdrive. Cape Hellfire represents the continuation of that story after the events that happen in Infinity 7, Gods Among Men. So you just pick that up, you keep going, you read that, and the comic books even reference following the events that happened in this book. So people know where they are in the series, and we didn't stop there. So that became what I did with Broken. As you can see, Kisa Donovan is the main protagonist of that story. I started off with a novel, Broken, book 1 of the Young Hellion series. Book 2 is the 24-page comic book, and book 3 is a 50-page graphic novel. So, like I said, hybrid publishing. If you get into the series that we have, you're going to move back and forth between different types of mediums with either novels, comics, novellas, and graphic novels. So we try to just cast a wider net to get more of an audience, because a lot of people come to our table and say, hey, I haven't read a comic in years. I really haven't read a novel. I only read comics. So we kind of get them with both, and we give them opportunities to kind of say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try this because this is so different. So it's been successful so far.
I was actually about to ask, what is your typical audience member like, or your typical reader like? Because in my experience, and this has changed in recent years, but generally up till recently, people read comics or they read novels, and there wasn't a lot of people crossing between the different mediums.
Right.
And that's changed, but it's taken a certain type of audience member to change that. And how have you had that conversation?
What I've found is that people who are readers will read both. They just say, "Hey, anything." So when they come to our table, we have a nice spread. We'll have, the books that I wrote, mainly the stuff that I write, the series. So I have the Bounty Hunter series, Still Rain, one novel, one comic. I have the Cape series, which you have basically Cape 1, Cape 2, Infinity 7, book 1 and 2, and of course Cape Hellfire. So there's 5 things to pick up there. If you want Broken, you have Broken book 1, book 2, book 3. So I have that, and I just say, hey, do you like zombie fiction? Do you like, dystopian? Do you like hard science fiction? Do you like superhero fiction? What do you like to read? And the readers go, a little bit of everything. I said, well, I got a little bit of everything. So they just kind of pick what they want. I really don't market to just hardcore comic folks, although when they come to the table, we've got over 10 comics to sell. So I usually have deals, if you buy 3, get 1 free kind of thing. And they'll just grab random comics that just catch their eye. So it's been really more of a majority of the novel readers, or just people who just love to consume anything that they can read, and then the rest on the smaller end are just the comic fans who just like comics and they just pick them up.
That is really, really cool. And I find it interesting. Like you're saying you don't necessarily gear toward the hardcore comic reader, but as a lot of my friends are hardcore comic readers and have been for years, and they're all saying the exact same thing is I'm getting away from Marvel and DC. I want those independent authors. I want those
Yes.
independent titles because they're doing stuff I haven't seen before. And I'm
Right.
looking at what you have here, and this is something I haven't seen before. And I've seen a lot of stuff.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that we want to be unique. We want to stand out. So when we say hybrid publishing, and people when they go to convention, they're like, "Well, I just got here. I'm going to walk around." I said, "I promise you, nobody's doing what we're doing." And they
Hmm.
come back to the table. They go, "Hey,
Hmm.
you were right. There's nothing out there. So let me see. What do you have?" And they kind of dive in a little deeper with the stories. They'll read the back of the book and get the synopsis on them and say, "I want to get this series. I want to get that series," and kind of dive in. So yes, we have a niche lane that we want to play in because we want to offer people something different. Our thing is to, and I'm a stickler for it. I've written screenplays, I've written over 20 novels. I'm a stickler for 3-act structure. And a lot of people don't try to cram that into a comic book, but the same rules for me apply. When somebody reads a comic, I want them to get a complete story. What we say with Star Child Comics is come and play in our worlds. So if you come play in our worlds, we want you to get a complete story, whether it's the comic book or the novel or both. And as you're moving through it, you're going to get that hero's journey through that comic book. So even if it's just one of 3, you finish that comic book and you're ready for the next piece. But it's going to be a complete work of storytelling that you're going to feel as if it wasn't. Because I've read some comments like, "Oh, that was just not a fluff, good images, but really no story." So I try to take people on a hero's journey where there's beginning with Act 1, diving into Act 2, and then finishing up with Act 3. It may end on a cliffhanger, but it's going to run you into the next book or comic that you read.
So what I'm hearing you say is that even though you have dozens of titles spanning many genres,
Mhm.
each one of those works individually stands on its own.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I have to ask because now you piqued my curiosity. I love screenplays myself. I have written a little bit, not as much as you have, I acknowledge. But when it comes to the Sid Field structure, that 3-act structure,
Hmm.
and you say you're a stickler for that, where do you stand on seeing those stories that have broken that mold and done their own thing? And how do you feel when you find the story's off the rails and you don't know where it's going?
That happens so often though.
Hmm.
The problem is, like I tell people, once you've written a few screenplays, I've taken intensives, been in groups, writing rooms. Once you've done it, film and TV become very different to you, because a lot of times I actually put the captions on because I want to see, like, I see the words, I see the script, and I'll see them right, and I go, oh, that's how they're setting that up, and I can kind of see where the writer is going with it. The stuff that's, it's funny because it's like, well, okay, when you're trying to sell a work or something, people are like, well, you got to make sure you have 3 extracts, you got to follow this, you have to have all these beats and things like that, and then you get the majority, I would say, of stories out there that don't even come close, and somehow they got greenlit. So you realize that it has really nothing to do with how good the story is, probably from relationships and things like that, where people are just like, hey, I
Hmm.
did this for you, you do this for me, and the stuff comes out terrible. And people are not even trying to follow structure. And there's those who are out there who are breaking the mold of three act structure. They go out a little bit, but they still come back to the same thing because again, this is tried and true and proven that if you take people on these journeys, the human psyche is expecting those things, those highs and lows, those peaks, those resets, the new plan, midpoint, going into the end all be all kind of moment, and that hero finally pulling up their bootstraps and saying, "This is my new plan. This has to work or nothing at all." With all along those stakes are being raised and lowered. That has to happen throughout the story because people are just so used to it. So even though they may play around a little bit, they come back to it. The one who I respect the most, who gets away with doing whatever he wants in the film, but he still follows the structured path, is Quentin Tarantino. He just goes off on a tangent of dialogue and exposition where people just have these long conversations, but in his mind, he's doing it for a purpose. It still has a purpose because when you finally get to the end, all of that stuff had meaning. It was never just to be rambling, unlike there's a lot of writers who you can just see it's just a ramble. It's just, I just want to spit a whole bunch of stuff out to either make the film longer or because it's just something I want to express, which is fine too. But I know I can sit with Quentin's writings and go, oh, I'm going to wait on this. He's going to come back to this and this is going to be good, because he's proven that he does it time and time again. So my thing is, if you got 24 pages, if you have 27 pages, if you have 20 pages in a comic, how do you cram that in? I do the same percentages of dicing that up. If it's a 20-page comic, I'm probably going to go act 1 0 to 1 to 5. I'll probably go 6 to 17 or 6 to 16 on act 2, and I'm going to just finish that thing up on those last 4 pages with act 3. And I'm just rolling, I'm moving from there.
So your scripts tend to be very second act heavy, from what I'm hearing.
Hmm.
And that's neither good or bad. I'm just as a descriptive thought.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And there are, because I've seen there are some directions that are very second act heavy and some of them are very third act heavy, and I tend to find the third act heavy ones the most rewarding
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
when they're longer movies.
Right, right,
Shorter
yeah.
move, yeah. Shorter movies tend to be better with a stronger second act. In my
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a comic, so I don't want to have a long third act. I feel like when third act is longer and something that's like a visual medium like that, in novels you can play around all day.
Hmm.
Your stuff can be 30%, 30%, 30% if you want, because you're still, I mean, you know how big that book is. You get into 100,000 words, 110,000, have fun, go at it. With a comic though, I really feel like I've got to have all that playtime, all that action stuff really in the middle and taking up the bulk of the story because those two bookends are really like the introduction. The main character has to make the decision if after the inciting incident if they're going to go on a journey. When they do, we're in Act 2. Here we are, we're in this journey now. What's happening along the way? Sometimes I try to rope a B story in there. It's a little bit harder with a comic again. I had a lot of fun with the graphic novel for the Broken series because I was finally able to get to 60 pages. So now you give me 60 pages of 5 to 6 panels per page. Man, I was cooking because I can get that B story in there too. I can really kind of root those characters. Kisa was going through a lot with the boy who she finally chose to be with. People who read the novel know there's a choice option there. And so I wanted to really dive into her a little bit with that relationship somewhat. I also wanted to kind of dig into the mental health issues that are really prevalent in the story of Broken. Uh, Things are hinted at in book 1, but I really wanted to kind of nail it finally in book 3 since I had a lot of time to play with the graphic novel. So I just making those choices along the way of what I feel is really the most predominant storyline to follow in the story because you got these three factions. You have the establishment who's kind of re-enslaved everybody based on a class system because money no longer has any value in this post-apocalyptic world. You've got the zombies, which are basically we call them ashers, and they're not mindless. They work as a hive mind. They're fast. They're actually very strategic in how they move. And we've got the hoarders, which are kind of like those Mad Max characters who they're just wild. They're in the wasteland, just ravaging anything and killing anybody they see on sight. So all of these uh, factions are vying for some level of dominance or supremacy in this world turned upside down. And Kisa is trying to navigate along that to try to avoid and only engage when necessary. So as I do that, I take the books and say, okay, well, let's talk more about the establishment and the hoarders here. The second book, which was the comic book, we really dug into given the zombie action, and I know people appreciate it. And then finally, when we came to book three, let's open up the world a little bit more. Let's add some more characters. Let's add even another faction a little bit, but let's really keep this thing grounded with Kisa too. So it was really a joy to work on all three of those, and now I'm already working on the fourth book in that series.
I I can hear the joy coming through here, and I can hear the excitement you have on it. And I'm having to wonder, what was it like when you first had the nugget of whatever became this idea here? How did you say, "Oh, this is more than just a cool thought. This could be a whole story." Is there a certain moment that came to you when that happened?
It was, I'm the father of three girls, and I wanted to dedicate something. Every book has a heartfelt theme for me. I kind of learned from uh, the book the book where I talk Save the Cat talks about making something primal and real. And you, as a writer, if you can put something in the story that is real and primal to you, that you love or you hate or something experience, it's going to make the story much better. So I always did it with every story I wrote. I was like, what's my foundation here? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it trust? Is it love? Is it honor? What is that? Is it fear? And so for me, my dedication of this story of Broken was to my three girls. So I took components of each one of their personalities, and they're separated by like 5 years apiece, so it's a lot there. And so I wanted to take a little piece of personality and throw them into Kisa's character at 16 years old, so I could see a little bit of them in each, and a little bit of each one of them in her character and the decisions she makes and how she tries to rationalize the world that she's been swept into since the time of all-out nuclear war. And so that was the idea, and I was like, oh man, this is actually pretty cool. I've never written a female protagonist from a first person perspective. Then why not do it from the perspective that I know my girls the best? And so that was the first part. But then it really got good to me, Aaron, when we had just had Star Child Comics getting off the ground. We had these 4 comic books that are being done with superhero fiction. That was exciting. So now people were starting to come into the DMs. Hey, I have a comic. I have this and that. I'm an artist. Can I, do anything for you? Can I do commissions? And this one guy came to me and approached me with this zombie comic. Had the whole thing done. He was from another country, but he sent it to me. I started just reading it. I was like, okay, this is cool. A couple of story elements I wanted to change because I could tell there was a language barrier, so it just wasn't clear. And I was being picky, but that's just the way I write. So I was like, hey, would you mind if I change some stuff to bring a little bit of clarity to your story? But otherwise, this is fantastic. And he was like, yeah. So I was like, good. So now I'm thinking of our catalog. We got superhero fiction. I was working on Steel Rain, so I knew we were going to get science fiction. And then now we got zombie fiction. Who doesn't want a zombie series, as a comic book publisher? And then I sent him the contract. I already went over all the stipulations of what it was going to be about. It took him like a couple of days to get back to me. I'm like, man, why doesn't this guy get back? We were going fire, back and forth. And then finally, after delay, he sent me an email saying, hey, actually, you're going to have to pay me $10,000 for the rights to this. And I want royalties on top of that. And I was like, okay, no. But
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of heartbroken because I was already ready. I was so excited about zombie series. And I'd already written Broken, and Broken was doing well. And I was actually going to write it as a novel series going forward. Like I just heard a little voice from God, like, hey, you got your own zombie story. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, you can't ever stop a writer.
Right.
No matter what you do, you can't stop a storyteller. You can not fund us, whatever. But if we get a pen and paper in our hand, or we get in front of a computer, we're always gonna have stories because we're the storytellers. So I was like, you're exactly right. I went in and started pinning out that comic, and that's when I knew I had something really nice to answer your question.
And that the kind of story and that kind of playing around and turning it around is what separates basically the pros from the amateurs. And what I say is
Absolutely.
that there's this type of person in the industry now they think of themselves as the idea guy. It's
Hmm.
like they're going to go up to the person with actual talent and give them the idea, and
Right.
they get their little chunk of change when
Right.
the person with the talent does all the work. And that's not how it actually works. And
Right.
it never works that way, but this idea keeps flooding around. It's like, no, because you can't copyright an idea, you can't trademark an idea. The idea itself doesn't mean much.
Absolutely.
It's the guy who sits in as, okay, the storyteller. It's not the
That's
story, it's
right.
the storytelling. And your storytelling is yours and it's yours forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember somebody was, we were in a writing intensive course, and somebody was like, yeah, this is my title and I need to copyright it. It was like, you can't copyright a title. You can tell your story the best way you can. I tell people all the time, you can go out tomorrow and make Snow White. You can go out tomorrow and make Star Wars. Nobody's gonna watch it because it's already branded.
mhm.
People already know if Disney's not a part of Snow White, they don't care. If Star Wars has nothing to do with Lucasfilm, and it could be amazing, nobody's gonna watch it. I remember when I used to have Redbox back in the day. I would go to Redbox, and every now and then you see a movie that just came out on Redbox from the movie theater. Then they have like another movie with the same title. It was probably about the same idea. Like, if you had a rental, who's gonna rent that? Nobody knows what that is. And it's like it doesn't even matter. Like you say, the story at the end of the day and the storyteller really is what matters the most.
It really is. And that's why I don't understand when people are like, well, we're running out of ideas. Like, no, we're not. There are people who are sitting out there and you might have to hunt for them a little bit. You might have to
Right,
do a little searching.
right,
But you go to those comic conventions, there's never not 10 tables of people with their own
right,
ideas
right.
and they put their own blood, sweat, and tears into
Yep,
doing it.
yep.
I'm really glad you're doing this. Now, which shows do you go to or have you been to already?
Okay. Atlanta Comic Con. I'm in
Okay.
Atlanta, so we were finally like waiting to get some of our big ones. Obviously, we have Dragon Con. I can't get in Dragon Con to save my life. I submit every year. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. So I reach out into the Southeast. Really, I've been to Atlanta, Alabama Comic Con, Nashville Comic Con, NugaCon, HeroesCon in North Carolina, which is coming up next month in June. I'm excited to get back to that one again. And think there's one in some smaller ones here that are kind of starting to get traction now with Georgia IndieCon. So some of those guys, I haven't been to the New York Comic Con or San Diego yet. I just haven't stepped into that realm yet. But I think next year will be one for me to really kind of go because I feel like we've got some fantastic titles. There's also Japan Fest down here and
Mhm.
Anime Weekend, which I'm going to go to this year because we are actually launching manga, comic, and novel next week from a fantastic author named Chris McCauley, who's worked on the Stokerverse.
I wish you all the success in the world to get to New York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con, but I don't want to discount the spot you're in right now
Yeah,
because I love the smaller conventions because they give somebody like you the chance to get to know their audience just as their
absolutely.
audience is getting to know them.
Yeah, yeah.
And you want that relationship, you want the people to know what you're all about and give them a chance to watch your story grow.
Yeah. And it's great when people come back like the next year, like, oh man, I was hoping you were going to be here. What you got? I remember I had this one guy came, he's like, what you got? I was like, I said, what did you get last year? He's like, well, I got Steel Rain last year, the comic and the novel. He said, what else you got? I said, oh, well, this year I got like Broken. He was like, give it to me. He didn't even, he didn't need to know the
Mhm.
story or whatever. He just became a fan. That's the most rewarding to me when somebody gets your story and your type of storytelling.
Mhm. Like to go back to, when we first got into comics as kids, you found that one hero or that group of heroes that you might
Right,
have wanted to read it all, but
right.
you would find like, man, if I can only grab one thing, it's going to be this because this got my attention.
Yeah, yeah.
And you
This is
still do
my
that
thing.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, this is my thing. And to your point where you're talking about people feel they're getting tired of Marvel and DC, it's like I think the issue is like how many times can Batman do this, Superman do that? And they have so many other characters that just need to come to the forefront that they have in their stable. But
Mhm.
we as indie or small press can't really compete with that. So if I say, hey, here's my superhero and I superimpose them against Superman, and somebody's already a big Superman fan, it doesn't really matter what my story is. Like they're not concerned. So my thing is, hey, what do you like to read? And I give them an original story. I give them a pitch on those stories, and then they go, Oh, no, I've never heard anything like that. That sounds interesting. But I don't want them to try to say, hey, you like Superman? Look at my guy. That you're going to lose with that every time.
I right before I got on this podcast, I just came from an art exhibition on comic book art at the Norman Firehouse Art Center,
Mm,
and I was talking with some of the people who work there, and the comic of Superman came up, and how you're already a big Superman fan, and I'm a big Superman fan. I
right,
love Superman.
right.
But here's the thing, it's like people will ask, what's the best version of Superman? And the truth is, the best version of Superman is whatever was being published when you personally were 14 years old.
Absolutely.
Because you get that zone, it's like that's what grabs your attention, and you're never going to deviate from that, or probably not. But you can grab something else today that means something to you right now.
Right.
That, if you're not 14 anymore, because it's been a minute for me, not going to lie, there's something that would mean something to me now that might not have meant anything to me at
Right,
14. And I
right.
think Broken is that kind of story.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited about it. I mean, every time I pick up, like I've got them here, like whenever I pick up the graphic novel, it's like it's nice and thick. It's got this great story and the cover art. Like, shout out to Ram Silva who did all my art for Broken copies. Issue 1, which is book 2, and this is issue 2, which is book 3. And my art, my colorist who does our lettering as well, Julio Caballeros. They are fabulous. They work fantastic together, and they have just put together some amazing artwork and pages in here. And I'm always just thrilled to see what they're going to come up with next when I give them, the script for the story. So they brought keys to the life, and every time I get out there and I'm able to move these comics and the novels, and people pick it up, I feel good because A, I know there's a really, really solid story within those pages, and B, I feel like it's industry standard stuff where nobody's gonna get in and go, oh, this kind of looks indie. You know what I mean? I feel like it's gonna compete with everybody.
I was going to say, and I hate to compare any artist because everybody's got their own style. They're all worthy of respect. But for the benefit of the people who are listening to this and don't see the cover that you had just held up there, I would see a cover that would fit in very nicely. I'm not going to say it's identical, but it would fit in very nicely with recent Marvel stuff, or in particular, maybe something done by Sam De La Rosa,
Yep.
who,
Thank
by
you.
the way, was on the show about 2, 3 years ago. You can look up
Uh-huh.
that episode too.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's at home in that quality of comics.
Yeah. And I'm an artist, right? I've always been into art. Now, granted, and I always did a disclaimer,
Mhm.
there's no way, unless I went to school for it, I could compete with these guys. These guys who we have in our, we have like 5 or 6 teams of men and women comic book artists who are fabulous, and I feel so good about that we recruited these folks. People come in and DM, "Hey, look at my art. Can I work?" And I'm like, "Nah," And I'm picky, so I know I have an artist's eye. I know what good stuff looks like, and when they put this stuff together, and I get excited about it, it's nice. Bruno Obvious, I don't know if you know Bruno. Bruno did Cape
I don't know
Hellfire.
this. No,
Look at this. I mean,
that's nice.
when he first came in, he was like, "Hey, what do you want the cover to look like?" I was like, "Well, I need the characters on there, kind of like fighting." And then he's like, "I think I have something for you." And he sent me the inks on this. I said, "You got to be kidding me," you know. And Bruno has since gone on to DC. He does their Cyborg series now. So like you
Cool.
say, it can compete. Nobody's
Yeah,
gonna sit here and say,
absolutely.
I don't know what that is. And I've seen, I table with a lot of people and I see their comics and I'm like, ooh, man, So I've seen them, and so yeah, so I feel like we're right up there with most of the big folks.
And I said your story has heart. Obviously, you have a great passion for it, and you're productive. This isn't going to be a one and done thing for you because you've already put more under your belt than some people get out in a whole career.
Right. Yeah. It's mind-boggling how much stuff we have, and like again, it's
Mhm.
not just me, it's a bunch of our authors that we have. We've got 7 books in the Legacy of Dragonwan series, by Daniel Payton. Book 7 comes out next week. It's actually, I mean, next month. It's actually the end of his saga. He's been writing this forever, and it's gotten, Kirkus recognition, and he's been an Amazon bestseller for quite a few of his books. So that series in of itself is great for the fantasy aficionados out there. We also have Drew Samuelson. He just released book 1 and 2 of the Restart series, kind of young adult, middle grade, post-apocalyptic story. So we've got things, like I said, if people come to our website, that's why we sell stuff by genre. When they scroll down our website, right down the center, it's going to tell you young adult, click on that image. You know, if you want superhero, click on that image. You want fantasy, you want science fiction, you want poetry. We make it very easy to navigate. You click on that, you're going to see titles. And if you read those synopses and you're a reader, I think you're going to find something that tickles your fancy.
For sure, for sure. So you're going to hit those conventions. Are you, do you have grander ambitions for these stories themselves beyond comics and novels, or are you have your hands full with just those two components right now?
I mean, of course I do. I mean, I've been writing since 2011. And since 2014, we really started getting Cosby Media Productions rolling. So we just had our 10-year anniversary last year, and the notion was always twofold with me with publishing. It was get original stories that I like and that I see having next level potential, be a TV series, be a movie, be whatever. Um, be a limited series, stage play, whatever. They have to have that type of potential in my mind as I'm reading through the submission. Also, I wanted to partner with authors. We have very competitive royalties. You know, we're not about taking the authors' money, but it's also giving them great products. We want to give them industry standard printing, industry standard formatting, cover designs, and book trailers and cover reveals. You know, we want to give them the opportunities to win. I say, hey, if you do your part, we'll do ours. We're going to give you all the tools, and now you have to market your stuff once we give it to you. You know.
That's awesome. There's such a, I don't want to say it's a problem right now because we have a lot of comic books and that's a good thing. But it's so disheartening in some ways to look at comic books and see, well, it's the result of a couple of really big companies doing these really expensive projects. And there are people who think they can't break into it because of that.
Right.
And this is that you're proof that that's wrong.
Right.
And I've talked to so many people who are like trying to make their own labels, make their own imprints, but you're going a step farther and giving a system where an artist can come up and say, here's what I've got. Can you get me the rest of the way?
Right. Right.
So, and that's really where the value comes in, and you're making it accessible in a way that it's never been before.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm a creative first, right? So I like to create. I like to see these stories go out. I want to see people get excited about the stuff that I'm writing. So I want to give other creatives opportunities to do that as well, you know?
For sure. And like so I think some people don't really realize how many people there are trying to do that who want independence to succeed because
Right.
that's somebody making a Broken today that might be the Indiana Jones of 20 years from now, or
Absolutely.
the Breaking Bad, or the
Yep.
Ghostbusters, the breakout story of our kids' generation
Yeah.
is somebody's independent comic today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's people are excited about, and I love Ghostbusters. I've watched every Ghostbusters movie.
Hmm.
It's my jam, but it started somewhere.
Yeah.
It was
Absolutely.
new one day, and people forget that
Right.
Superman was new one day.
Right. Right.
June 5th, 1936, there was no Superman. The day
Right.
later, there was a Superman. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what makes stories great. I tell people all the time, man, this book is eternal. You know, oh, I published that book 10 years ago, but if I go to a convention in Arizona and
Mhm.
I bring my first book with me, those people haven't heard of it before.
Oh, I love that. I'm sorry, you just hit me right where in the feels there because doing the convention circuit, I have been to conventions around the corner from my house, and I've been
Yep.
to conventions in other countries. And it's like that feeling of stepping someplace for the first time and meeting the new audience that hasn't
Yes.
seen you before.
Yes.
And they're like,
Absolutely.
they want to see what you have. I love that.
Yeah. I like when
How,
people I've had people almost get like angry, like, oh my God, where have you been? I've never knew this stuff existed. And who is this person? You know? And we had a guy who did a review on it on TikTok the other day. And he was like, I read Broken, and it was like this fantastic review, but he was like, I give it a 1 million out of 10. You know,
what?
and then I'm like, oh, okay. And then these other people like chiming in on it. They're like, I haven't heard of this before. Like, what is this? You know, so that's the good thing. You're reaching this other audience and giving them people opportunity to read something maybe that they've never even thought of before, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And the people going to those conventions are the ones that are their ears are open for something new.
Right, right.
Well, so we mentioned the shows you've been to. Do you have any on the slate for the future? You mentioned one.
Yes. So my schedule is actually picking up. I coach my daughter's track team this year, so that took up a lot of my Saturdays in the first half of the year. She's graduating, thank God, and so now I'm back on the road. And so yeah, my slate for the rest of the year, like I'm be like 6 or 7 conventions. Let me see if I can get it. June is going to be HeroesCon. The end of July, I think um is that anime? No, the end of August is Anime Verse in Tennessee. End of September is Incredible Con in South Carolina. And then rolling into September, we have the Northeast Georgia book convention. And then it's just gonna keep going from there. I think I got like 4 or 5, and of course anime weekend in Atlanta. So yeah, so we're getting busy really soon. So I'm excited to hit the road.
And of course, the best way for somebody to track where you're going to be is to follow your social media feeds. Where can they go
Absolutely.
ahead and do that? And your website, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. And we do have our press release area. So we have to update it probably this weekend. The webmaster updated this weekend because we finally got that calendar solidified with all, the application to get back and you pay, and now you got your seat. So, and then next year we'll be back at South Carolina Comic Con, which is one of my favorite conventions. So yeah, we'll be moseying around, and if people are on our social media, they'll actually see it, but they can also see it on the website as well.
Okay. And I'm going to make sure that all the links to those things get put in the show notes of my website, aaronbostic.com. Braxton, I want to thank you so much. I wish you all the success in the world, and I hope to meet you at one of those conventions really soon.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on, man. Much appreciated.
Glad to do it.